Welcome into the Friday afternoon Longhorn Livestream. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by Rod Babers and CJ Vogel. Guess what? TGIF. Let's have a little fun this afternoon. A couple of Longhorns went in the first round last night. Byron Murphy and Xavier Worthy both found new homes. Murphy in Seattle. Then we had Worthy going to unbelievably Kansas City in what we thought was just a ridiculous amount of fortune for Xavier Worthy. I'll let you start us off here and get the discussion going. What do you thought about the two draft picks from last night? And then maybe give us a thought of what's going to happen today up in Detroit with the NFL draft.
Honestly, I'm with you. I start with Xavier Worthy. There's not a more picture perfect location for him. He ends up with the best offensive play caller in the NFL and head coach, because he's on his way to being a GOAT in Andy Reid, the best quarterback in the league. And what I love about it is we know Travis Kelce is on his way out the door. We just don't know what the time frame is, right? It's going to be, could it be if they three-peat and go, 3 in a row, could he decide, hey, I'm going to propose to Taylor Swift and ride off into the sunset like his brother and then do the simulcast and make all the money from all the endorsements and stuff like that? Or is he going to, maybe come back and try to do something even unprecedented? He's already established himself as the GOAT of tight ends too. So he doesn't have much to prove. So whenever Travis Kelce in the next couple of years steps away, you're going to be looking at Xavier Worthy potentially, if he proves himself as the featured piece. And they're going to build a passing game or run the passing game through him with Patrick Mahomes. That is a scary thought. And now it is something that's a football-related nugget. The Kansas City Chiefs have changed their offense. It's actually a dramatic shift. I'll just give you one stat to talk about it. Over the last 5 seasons, if you look at the average length of touchdown passes, the average length of a touchdown pass from Patrick Mahomes, in 2019, it was 17 yards. In 2020, it was 13. 2021, it was 8.5. In 2022, it was 4.5. In 2023, it was 3.9.
Holy cow.
In the last 2 years, Patrick Mahomes has thrown a total of 2 touchdowns that have traveled over 20 yards.
Wow.
He's got more interceptions in the last year. This past season, he's got touchdowns through the air, throwing it deep. They've totally changed their offense. They used to be the best deep passing team and vertical centric team in the NFL because they had Tyreek Hill. And even after Tyreek Hill, they still were able to do that. But now the wide receiving core is that lackluster. I'm not going to trash them. It's lackluster. And, you still have Patrick Mahomes with that ability, but they've become a short intermediate passing game. How often do you see Travis Kelce go deep? Not very often. Travis Kelce is working the short to intermediate area. Think about how deadly that offense is going to be now. You're going to add the verticality of the fastest human being to ever go to the NFL Combine with another 4.2 in Hollywood Brown somewhere on the other side. The Irish are going to keep him on this. You might put him on the same side. Who knows? And open up the other side for Travis Kelce to work on his own. But now defenses they have to respect the deep vertical threat now from the Kansas City Chiefs. The last 2 years, it's actually been easier to defend Kansas City because the wide receivers aren't as good and they don't threaten you deep. Patrick Mahomes is just so damn good at extending plays, avoiding sacks, and just making accurate throws that he can just work short to intermediate, even being a lackluster to even mediocre to subpar quarterback when it comes to throwing the ball deep. The irony of it is, though, that we all know at Texas, if you go look at it, Xavier Worthy wasn't a great deep ball threat at Texas, or at least the stats would tell you that. And most of the scouts must believe when they watch the film that was attributed to Quinn Ewers and not to Xavier Worthy, because the stats would tell you Xavier Worthy is not necessarily a great deep ball threat. Here's the stat. He averages 9.2 career yards per target on deep passes. That is among the worst projected number for any non-undrafted Power 5 wide receiver in this class. So basically, his numbers say that he's one of the deep, if not the worst, deep ball receiver in this class. But the eye test, and we all watched Xavier Worthy tell you, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. You got to watch him, and I think Quinn Ewers' progression All right, and his evolution, and he's getting better at throwing the deep ball, but the struggles early on. And remember, think about the Oklahoma State game, guys. Just think about that one game in itself, and how many times they forced the ball deep to Xavier Worthy, who had a broke hand, and turns out that Quinn Ewers had a messed up hand at the time too. And it was just like, hold up, what's going on? Can somebody infuse some sanity in this situation with a whirlwind? And Sark's like, hey, we bombing it, we're throwing it deep, and it's like. Well, Sark, they're obviously they want you to throw it deep, right? They're obviously baiting you to throw it deep. You don't see this now, and he just we're throwing it deep. So he was stubborn early on, and I think that hurt, the productivity and the stats, if you will, for Xavier Worthy in that regard. But Brett Veach watched that film and thought to himself, no, in our offense, he's going to be a great deep threat and a guy that we can scheme open.
Here's another thing I want to add to it. So a lot of those Tyreek Hill long throws from Patrick Mahomes, they were after scrambles. And Pat Mahomes is still going to be able to do that, and Xavier Worthy's still going to be able to run by people.
Yep.
Quinn Ewers is not a great scrambler. He may be many things, but he's not a great scrambler that's going to give a guy an additional 2 seconds to get open downfield, right, Rod?
Nope.
And so that opens up a level of Xavier Worthy's game that we really haven't seen much of. I mean, think about it. How much scramble drill effect have we seen from Quinn Ewers to Xavier Worthy over the last 2 years?
No, that was Sam Ellinger's thing. Sam loved the scramble drill.
Yeah, but you get my point, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe, frankly, that's what Pat Mahomes has missed in Kansas City, is that deep threat to get open deep, because
he's scrambling.
Yeah.
You're right. That's a good point, Bobby. You're right. Because nobody's better at sack avoidance in the NFL than Patrick. You can even see he avoids sacks better than any QB in the league. And now with a vertical threat, that's good, Bobby. And he can make any throw from any position on the football field.
All right, CJ, I want to go to you next and talk a little bit about the guys that are coming up this week or tonight. We hope we'll see some Longhorns go off the board. But first, I want to say thank you to one of our sponsors on Friday. Guys, go have some fun this weekend. Go drink a little vino out in the Lago Vista area. 11 awards in 30 days, including double gold Grand Reserve and Texas Grand Reserve at the Houston Rodeo. Flat Creek Estate Winery is raking in the awards, and it's just a few minutes from the heart of Austin. Select bottles of the wines by Flat Creek Estate are now available at your local Specs, and you can get a taste of what they're all about. This is some good stuff now. Rod and I tried it about a week and a half ago, Rod. Flat Creek Estate is also a gorgeous venue, hosting events for the whole family all spring and summer long. Take it. Their winemakers dinner is one that you want to make sure you hit. They also have tours of the place, tastings, all kinds of different things. Eat, drink, and be awesome at Flat Creek Estate, Austin's award-winning wine company. For more info, visit flatcreekestate.com. Hey, Rod or CJ, I'm going to go to you now and talk a little bit about what's coming up tonight. A.D. Mitchell expected to go off the board early. What about Christian Jones? Is Jonathan Brooks a future Cowboy? I tell you what, I don't know if anybody's ever overplayed their hand more than Jerry Jones is doing right now for Jonathan Brooks.
What are we doing?
Isn't that remarkable? It feels like that only happens with Jerry Jones as well, right? Like, I feel like it happens once or twice every year in the draft. What was it last year, Rod? They ended up, taking a photo or leaking a video of the whole big board behind them in the war room. It's only the Cowboys and it's only Jerry Jones. But to the point, it should be an exciting night for the Longhorns this evening, and it should start very quickly. Of course, I think a lot of Texas fans, rightfully so, were a little bit bummed that they didn't see Adonai Mitchell hear his name called last night in the first round. Of course, it felt like Buffalo was toying around with the idea of taking him in that first round. They've been a mock draft marriage throughout the entire offseason, it feels like. Of course, Buffalo traded down twice. They started at 28, gave it to Kansas City, ended up at 32, gave that to Carolina. Now they sit at 33, and the opportunity really to start day 2 of the NFL draft is the opportunity for A.D. Mitchell to go number 1 in round 2 of the 2024 NFL draft. That's really exciting, of course. And even if he doesn't go to the Bills there. There's plenty other wide receiver needy teams early in that round. Of course, you talk about guys like Ladd McConkey and many other wide receivers. You expect an early run in that second round. Right now, I think it starts with the bang with A.D. Mitchell, and then you start getting into that back end of the second round. Do the Cowboys hold true to what Jerry Jones has been saying and end up taking their running back of the future in Jonathan Brooks? It certainly feels like they're showing their cards at the poker table, that's for sure. But my question is, how many of those Longhorns end up in round 3? Does T'Vondre Sweat end up going in round 3? Does Jatavian Sanders' fall in before day 2? It feels like he's been a rock essentially in these mock drafts, and there's not a whole lot of lifeline right now with his draft stock. So that'll be interesting. And of course, Christian Jones, who the complete opposite, it feels like he's attached to a helium balloon and is skyrocketing up all of these big boards at the moment. So the way that things are really, really looking for Christian Jones is encouraging, of course, because again, this was a guy several years ago. It didn't look like he was going to be a guy to stay on the field for Texas. He was struggling seemingly week in and week out, regardless of competition. And now we're talking about him sneaking into day 2 of the NFL draft. It's been a tremendous rise for him. So I'm encouraged again for what Kyle Flood can do with the rest of this offensive line group while he is on campus. I'm hoping if you set the over under at 4.5, I'm hoping for the over. I think we'll see the under. I think we'll see four Longhorns tonight in rounds 2 and 3 of the NFL draft.
Let's talk about that. Rob, what do you got? Who do you have going tonight? Because I just put something up there. One of the posters or commenters said that JT Sanders may be going to Miami. I had heard that was one of the people that Mike McDaniels had come down to look at for his pro day in Austin. It wasn't necessarily Mitchell and Worthy, even though we know how much speed McDaniel likes. So that was interesting. Do you think Jonathan Brooks goes? I think he and A.D. Mitchell for sure going in the next 2 rounds. After that, does Sweat, does T'Vondre Sweat, does JT Sanders, and maybe Christian Jones sneak in there as well. So what do you think?
Yeah. No, the strange thing is and you didn't have as many trades as I thought you'd have in the first round. But I did, say that I think that 3 Texas players were going to be really like possible trade candidates. Like teams would trade for them, I should say. Yep. And I said it was Xavier Worthy, who was traded for. And obviously, Kansas City traded up for him. And I said JT Sanders and T'Vondre Sweat are Texas players I think teams would trade for. And the reason is because a lot of the NFL guys that I know, when it comes to their belief in the draft, a lot of them don't like outliers. Essentially, the NFL they split 50-50 on outliers. Some of them love outliers, and a lot of them don't like outliers, right? And essentially they want parameters, and they like essentially almost a scientific method on how to pick players. You're in a certain percentile when it comes to wingspan, arm length, height, speed. That's why they want all these measurables. Essentially, they want to come up with their own almost algorithm. Like, all right, this guy, he's in this percentile of these. He's going to project to be a good player. And that is true in a lot of positions. It's not necessarily true in quarterback, but it's true for a lot of positions. And I think we start looking at that. You have outliers like Xavier Worthy, who, because he's 166 pounds, there are some teams that go, oh, there's no way I'm going to draft that dude in the first round at wide receiver. Because if you go look at the history of wide receivers who've been that weight that have had success in the NFL, it ain't been many. So they're like, that's an outlier. I'm not going to do that. And even his speed actually makes him an outlier because he's the fastest human being ever at the combine. But some teams, that combination, they love that. They love it. Like, oh, no. And there are teams that ultimately are close, and they've already built their teams. A lot of the time they've built at least one phase of their team, and they know this particular outlier will put them over the top. It put us over the top. Now, for other teams, they may not know how to maximize. It may be the wrong situation, but for us, Kansas City, Xavier Worthy is perfect for an Andy Reid system with a Patrick Mahomes and a Travis Kelce and all those stuff. He is the perfect weapon. And I think same thing with Devondre Sweat. He's going to go into the NFL as the biggest defensive tackle in the league when he's drafted. Some teams go, no, man, that's too much of an outlier. He's too big. He's too massive. We got to take him off our board. That's not really how that's not good for our system. But some teams will go, oh, he's perfect. We hadn't seen one like him before. Oh, it's exactly what we need. And they're salivating, just waiting for an opportunity to trade for that guy because he's such an outlier. And Devondre Sweat really is, because the way his movement and his agility for that size is amazing. And when guys like Dane Brugler and are reporting that he was close to like 380 or something like that, 390. It's amazing watching him move now. I'm not even saying that's true, but I'm just saying he's huge. I mean, he came to the pro day bigger than he was at the combine. There's still value out there for run stoppers. Yes. And he's a run stopper that could be a pass rusher. He's both, I think. I think he's both, Bobby. I think he can be a pass rusher too. I really do.
I think he could definitely push the pocket.
Yes.
He won't necessarily get to the quarterback per se, but he can control the middle enough against these bonus-sized guards in the NFL that'll make it. Hey, Bingle, our friend Bingle, CJ, you talked to him quite a bit, or I talked to him like he's a friend of ours. I love Rod Babers, man.
Thank you, brother.
That goes for a lot of us here at On Texas Football. Michael Morrison says rumors that KC is interested in Devondre Sweat. To your point, maybe they go out of the box on both sides of the ball, and both times
they're
Longhorns.
Yeah. Hey, Longhorns have a rich tradition with Kansas City. Derek Johnson, right? Priest Holmes, Jamal Charles. You're talking about the leading rusher, the leading
Derek Johnson
touchdown. Exactly. You got a lot of those. Rich
Charles Omenihu right now. Alex Okafor.
Yeah,
a bunch.
They like Longhorns up there.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to see it because I think they're probably going to get another Super Bowl ring at some point in the next 3 to 4 years.
I ain't betting against them. I'm not betting against them. I wouldn't bet against it. Nope.
All right, guys. Hey, we got a rule come out. Matt, I sent you a link. If you don't mind bringing that up. CJ sent us this right as we were getting ready to go on the air. This is very interesting. Can you blow up that Matt? The actual topic that I want to talk about is over here. To reduce, this is from NFL Ops. To reduce player risk and continue driving innovations in equipment, Guardian caps have been authorized for in-game use this season. What are Guardian caps? Take a look to the photo at the left. Now, Matt, will you bring that over a little bit for us? Those are Guardian camps. You think we're going to see those on NFL players this fall? And I will say this. If it's happening in the NFL, the NCAA should follow suit if it deals with safety.
Wow. That's interesting. I mean, I've been using them in practice for a long time. I don't know how long. I've never worn one of those. I'm old school. So that's
wouldn't it make your head like it used to make football helmet used to make me, because I didn't have that strong neck. It used to make me feel a little bit like a bobblehead. You know what I'm talking about? A little top heavy, right? When you're young.
I don't know. It may be light. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I gotta go. I'm sure Texas has them. I gotta go and see like what I know how heavy they are and what it is. That's interesting. I didn't know that. That's I would say this though about that. I wonder how many is it optional for the players or is it a team thing? Can the team say we're wearing them, you're wearing them, or is it a player-to-player thing like most equipment where now I wear the equipment that I prefer?
This literally just came out in the last 30 minutes.
Yeah.
We haven't heard that discussion yet. Yeah. And I think the key phrase here is has been authorized.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's been mandated.
Yeah. And I wonder
if the next phrase be it's now being mandated. I can see Pat Mahomes and CJ Stroud and Dak Prescott wearing it. That's for sure. I bet Troy Aikman wishes he would have had one.
It's a great point.
It makes me wonder how if this, if players do opt to wear this, how much these helmet companies start lobbying, the NFL rules makers to say, hold on, we got to show off our helmets. We just designed all these crazy looking helmets. These Zenith helmets, the Riddell speed, the revolutions, whatever it was back in the day, Rod. Everybody used to fight for the cool, modern look at the helmets. If that's no longer going to be something that these companies can then sell down to the college ranks and high school ranks, well, that changes a whole lot. So I wonder if they'll have a say in this, or at least get into the game, because again, it's brilliant. It's great to have the opportunity to reduce concussions. I think a lot of folks like that concept of the rule with the Guardian caps. But of course, some of these big time helmet companies, and we see them all the time, especially at the high school All-American games with, they got the camps, they got the showcases, they got those booths set up with different looking helmets and the models. And, all of that is to then get into the world of high school athletics and make it affordable to then get into, youth leagues, your town sports leagues that really allow for a number of these big time units to be sold. So I wonder if they'll have a say in this before it's all said and done, or if we continue to see innovation with these caps to maybe even create different looks. Because again, it's brilliant. We have them in 7-on-7 everywhere we go. It's kind of a dorky look, but I mean, it saves brains. It keeps the brains, completely solid, rather than looking a little mashed potato-y after a concussion. So that's great. Love that. Brains are good. So I think it's a good step forward in the right direction for player safety here.
No, and I'll add this. A big reason why, because the NFL has been doing this in a number of different ways. They understand right now they're pitching to really moms, right? Moms, housewives. They even want to get the future moms. They're even trying to get, that's why the Taylor Swift thing is so big. They want to get to young girls and teenage girls, future moms. The whole purpose is they don't want them to be afraid of their sons playing football, period. That's what they need to do. So they need to form a more intimate relationship between women and football. So that's a different discussion than what we're talking about. But still, this is also geared toward all the moms out there who won't allow their sons to play football because they think it's too dangerous of a sport. And I think their hope is that this does trickle down to the lower levels, and it's seen as something that's making the game safer, which it is, as you talked about, CJ, and the game will appeal now to women who are most notably and more importantly, moms who are brains are good. Yeah, that's the quote of the day. But that's the NFL's, just so you know, behind the scenes, that is right now what they're working on. Like, that is their big marketing scheme. That's why the Taylor Swift thing, be like, why was it such a big deal? It was such a big deal because the NFL has been trying their best to try to pitch this game to teenage girls, which is like, how the hell do you do that? The truth is, actually, the candy cigarette has been flag football. That's what they find. If you notice all these female, the little girl flag football leagues popping up, that ain't no coincidence, y'all. Trust me. The NFL is the number one TV show in America. They went to work, and they want to make sure they get young ladies to have a different view of the game, perception of the game, relationship with the game. Therefore, when they have sons in 10, whatever years it may be, that they'll go, no, it's cool for you to play football. Matter of fact, I want you to play football. I can't wait. I actually am a football fan. So that's the big pitch, and it's all tied together. Hey.
Good stuff, Rod. I hadn't even thought about that, to be honest with you. So I got a couple of questions going on here in the chat. Feel free to get your chat questions in. We'll try to take them on this afternoon. We got plenty of time here. Longhorns also working in the portal. They just finished hosting Dominic Williams from TCU, defensive lineman, earlier this week. He is now looking at a visit to LSU this weekend, then possibly Missouri early next week. As of right now, we expect a decision mid to late next week from Dominic Williams. So keep that in mind. Texas also looking for a cornerback in the portal. Possibly Takario Davis, possibly Anthony Johnson. Davis from Arizona, Johnson from Western Kentucky. Other guys still going in the portal, by the way. That portal does not close until April 30th, which is next Tuesday. All right, I got a couple of quick questions to get off here. Clifton Hines, off topic, but do we know how Malik Murphy is looking at Duke, starting or no? CJ, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he is a starter at Duke right now, correct?
He is, and I actually got to watch a little bit of that Duke spring game. It's a bit of a bizarre game setup that they had up there for the spring game. Half of it was a 7-on-7 with only a defensive secondary in play. The other half had an offensive line and a full 11-on-11 setup. So not a full idea of what he can do with that Duke offense. Of course, he split reps with that 7-on-7 look as well as that full 11-on-11 look in terms of what it took. One obviously was only a pass-only set. So tough to get a real gauge, but he did have some nice plays. There was a big touchdown pass in that game, but he is slated to be the starter right now for Duke. And, hey, I think a lot of Longhorn fans are really rooting and pulling for Malik Murphy here because, of course, he helped Texas win 3 ball games a year ago and help them earn their first berth in the college football playoff last year.
All right, I got a couple more questions. This is a follow-up a little bit to that I think's pretty good, by the way, that gives us another question as it relates to the NFL draft. Brendan Bonner, who is a guy on the current Texas roster that might have been lower rated, like Murphy, that we could see climb into the first round? Who is a guy that might be lower rated but could climb into the first round? Any thoughts on that, guys? Dominic Williams could be if he's a Longhorn. Just going to put that out there. But he ain't a Longhorn yet. so you have to look at that. Other guys on offense, I mean, Jaden Blue wasn't ranked a 5-star, frankly, but he was still highly rated. Texas doesn't have many 3-stars left that are starting right now.
No.
That's part of the issue.
I like Cam Williams. Give him 2 years potentially. I mean, that's a guy with incredible length, incredible size, big hands. If he can showcase that, pass blocking ability in the SEC off that quickness, that could be a guy after 2 years that could really rise up. Of course, we've seen Kyle Flood have some big time success with those. I don't want to call them oversized tackles, but those guys that are teetering around 350 or 360. So that's an interesting one for me. I think he might have an opportunity to really be a day 2 or potentially day 1 guy because, of course, we saw 8 offensive tackles go in the first round last night. There's always a premium for those guys. That's an interesting one for me.
Yeah, good call. Rod, do you have anybody that you would point to?
That's tough, man. I don't have many in mind right now. That you basically talking about someone who's not a blue chip.
Yeah, but that's part of the problem is Barron Sorrell is one. I don't know if Barron would make it into the first round. He's got to have more sack numbers, right? And they didn't take – I mean, God, they took like 2 defensive ends or 3 defensive ends in all of the first round, right?
Yeah, this was
guy, Dallas Turner.
They set a record for offensive guys though, so it was one of those types. It was like a historic draft. Like there's 23 offensive players taken in the first round. They set a record. That's why. But I don't have one. Honestly, they don't have a lot. I don't necessarily think they have a guy like that. That's rare, guys. That doesn't happen a lot.
I like that one with Ryan Nelson, Trevor Gooseby. Again, you have to put together, in my opinion, multiple years of starting to jump into that first round. Kelvin Banks departs after 2024. That opens the door for 2 seasons for Trevor Gooseby. We know the athleticism is there. He's certainly big enough. I mean, what's he pushing right now, Bobby? About 6'7" and 320. I mean, that's a big boy. We've heard a lot of good things about him behind the scenes. He had a strong spring, another year of development going into the fall, and you could potentially see, again, offensive tackles, to me, it's an easy position to point to and say, yeah, I mean, if you have the size, you have the strength, it makes sense because there's always going to be a need for those guys early in the NFL draft. So potentially Trevor Gooseby.
I will say this, of the group that just got put out there, the group of Sorrell, Burke, and Vosick might be the group that I would bet on having NFL careers that weren't necessarily blue chip guys. That's a good way to put that. First round, I don't know. NFL careers, different story.
That's a different, I agree. Different discussion there.
Yeah, because Murphy his rise was meteoric.
Yeah,
he went from a 3-star, low 4-star to the number 3 defensive player taken in the draft or number 2 defensive player, whatever he was.
Yeah.
That to Rod's point, that just doesn't happen often. If you're asking for that sort of meteoric rise, I don't know. Second, third, fourth round, though, ball game.
Guys. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah,
I like that Trey Owens one too. And it may not be in Texas, but I like that Trey Owens. I'm a sleeper. I don't know what he was rated. What was Trey Owens rated? I have no idea.
He was a low 4-star, but he was Greater Houston Player of the Year. And I'll tell you right now, he has a better arm than like half the guys that just went in the first round yesterday. All right. Hey, Rod, let's tell people about one of our newest sponsors, group down in South Austin on the Motor Mile.
Yes, sir. Our friends over at South Point Dodge. All right, Longhorn fans, if you want to score an easy extra point this season, you can head on over to South Point Dodge. South Point Dodge has over 600 vehicles in stock, and their award-winning sales staff, they don't play games, folks. They're not into gimmicks. They want to make sure that they get you the best deal possible. That's all they're about. So you can score big today at South Point Dodge. You can go see them off I-35, or you can go visit them online at southpointdodge.com. Get to the point at South Point Dodge.
Good stuff.
Thank you very much for your support.
Good stuff. Hey, guys, we started off talking a little bit about Longhorn football and tonight in the draft. Where did we come out? What's the over and under for tonight? 4 more Longhorns? Because there's 5 really that we think are available.
Right.
In this range, right?
Yep.
And we think JT Sanders, Christian Jones, and Tavondre Sweat are the maybes. We think that Adonai Mitchell and Jonathan Brooks will definitely go. So 2 definites, 3 maybes in here.
I do think Sweat goes. Again, the Outland Award-winning trophy winner, he interior defensive line, that's a premium spot. He was the best interior guy a year ago in all of college football. The weight's a concern. He had the off-the-field issue as well a few weeks ago. But at the same time, I mean, if you have an opportunity to really create a strength for your team by anchoring the run with what he does on the field, I think you have to roll the dice there. And Rod, you mentioned it a few weeks ago. I think there's some teams that are really excited for the opportunity to get him later in the draft, and they expected him to go. And it's unfortunate, of course, why that's the case. But at the end of the day, he's going to be a good football player in the NFL for a long time. And I think there's no way he falls out of the 3rd round. The other 2, Christian Jones and Jatavian Sanders, which it's crazy that we're even having the conversation about Jatavian Sanders after what we've seen the last 2 seasons on the field. But, I mean, it just hasn't been a good postseason, into the draft the last couple of months for him. It's been quite poor in my eyes, especially with the performance that we saw at the pro day, only 8 reps. He didn't jump very high. The explosivity wasn't on display. He can run routes very well. He's got tremendous hands, but then you watch the tape again. There's not a lot of separation that's not schemed open for him by Sarkisian. That's something that I think is a little bit of a red flag. And then you watch him in the trenches as well. At 8 reps, it's not like you can expect him to make a big jump in that game immediately when he enters the NFL. So I'm a bit concerned about his draft stock right now. And this is, again, as we've kind of looked at it over the last year plus, as Jatavian Sanders is going to be that tight end too, regardless of what he puts on the field. I'm not sure that's going to be the case again this evening. So big night for him, big night for Christian Jones. Right now, I see 4 guys. I think one of the 2, JT Sanders or Jones, go. I would be a bit surprised if both go. So I'll stick at 4.
You're saying 4 tonight, and then 2 tomorrow, likely with one of those guys as well as Jalen Ford. What do you think, Rod?
I'm going 3 tomorrow.
3 tomorrow. Who else? Oh, Ryan Watts.
Ryan Watts.
I like Ryan Watts' chances to get drafted. He's that last guy for me. I think he sneaks in. Again, a 6'3" guy, 4'5", jumps very high. The explosivity showed up at the combine and the pro day. That's a guy to me. I think an NFL team takes a chance. I've had him mocked to the Steelers at 178 in the 6th round since the pro days wrapped up. So that's a guy I think will sneak in just again because at late round, and especially with the draft how it is now with the NIL attracting a lot of big time talent that might have been on the fence to enter, it now opens the door for a guy like Watts to hear his name called.
I like that, CJ. I agree.
Where you at, Rod? You think 4 tonight, 3 or 4 tonight, 3 tomorrow potentially?
I agree with CJ about the T'Vondre Sweat thing. Like I said, I think when a team sees him dropping, they're going to trade for him. He's such a unique outlier, as I said. And think about it, when the NFL drafts about value. So if you have an outlier, you don't want to draft that guy high. At least teams are thinking this, because if it doesn't work out, teams are going to say, well, yeah, of course it didn't work out. Look at how much of an outlier he was. You've never seen a player like that work out in the NFL. And guys and NFL GMs and scouts, they don't want their job to be on the line because they picked an outlier too high. But if that outlier drops later on the draft, then that's better value, because they may be an outlier of an athlete or a case, but still now I don't spend as much money, not as much guaranteed money they were to spend on them. You cut the guaranteed money in half from the first to the second round. And then you continue to drop that guaranteed money as you go round and round. So T'Vondre Sweat in the third round, teams are thinking, he may be a risk because he likes to party or whatever, and the DWI or whatever it may be, and his weight, how many whatever red flags you want to throw out there. Yeah, that's an issue for you if you draft them in the first. If you drafted them in the second, draft them in the third, you know what? That's worth the risk. It's like if it is a risk, you know what? That's well worth it. Premium position, because if he works out, this is how the GMs are thinking, that if he works out, oh man, that's a lot. That they got outperformed his draft position, and you get a lot of return on that investment. So unfortunately, there are a lot of teams actually, because he's an outlier, will be more interested in him now dropping to the third round than they would if he didn't have the red flags and was in the first or the second round. So yes, I agree. He's not going to go past the third round. I think JT Sanders is very similar. At 5, by the way, they do pay attention to what your recruiting ranking is. So 5-star guy, that usually 5-star guys have some elite athletic traits, right? Or at least one or two elite athletic traits. And I thought maybe watching JT Sanders he did, but watching the testing before the draft, I didn't identify any. The beautiful thing about Ryan Watts, and why CJ's right about Ryan Watts, the film didn't match up with the testing. You have to go back to the film after you saw the testing of Ryan Watts and go, whoa, he has great change of direction. His testing is unbelievable. Why didn't that add up to the film? And you got to go back. So I think teams will, because he can play safety or corner. So I think teams will go back and look at Ryan Watts and potentially roll the dice on him, because they got practice squad rules that are different now. You can keep guys there. You can have more developmental projects. But yeah, the JT Sanders, I think he's also an outlier just because the testing does not match up at all kind of with his productivity on the field. And I think teams who have the right system, they'll decide, you know what, he's actually the right fit for us. I know his testing was bad, that's why he's dropping, but for us, he's the perfect guy for our system. Like you said, CJ, to be able to scheme him open situationally. So I think all three of those guys are trade candidates. I talked about that, Xavier Worthy, T'Vondre Sweat, and for my man JT Sanders. So I think you get 4 today, because I think you get T'Vondre Sweat, of course, Jonathan Brooks. If Jonathan Brooks doesn't go to the Cowboys, this is one of the greatest smoke screens in NFL history then, because I mean, everybody's got at that 56 pick, everybody's got the Cowboys taking Jonathan Brooks. And then what does Jerry Jones say? That Jonathan Brooks, in all of his 30 years of being a front office executive, Jonathan Brooks had the most impressive interview that he's ever had with any draft prospect. And you go, Jerry, if you like him that much, you shouldn't tell people that until after you draft him. You don't tell people that before the draft, because what does that mean? Well, you know what I can do? I can actually, if I'm the Texans, say Nick Caserio, for example, I can hit up Jerry and say, Jerry, I'm thinking about drafting Jonathan Brooks, man. Just so you know, I'm a real big fan of him. I know you really like him, so we got some other running backs on our board. What are you willing to give up to get the pick to get Jonathan Brooks? Because we might take him ahead of you. You know what I mean? You can go, you can toy with this dude now. Like, what are you doing, Jerry? What are you doing? Shut your mouth. What are you doing? We're just giving out vital information like that. Anyway, so yeah, I think
my thought is he's not taking him. Somebody had Brooks. I think it was CBS had Brooks mocked to the Green Bay Packers. They just lost Aaron Jones.
Hey, that's a good one.
Yeah. So, hey, let's go back to some Longhorn talk here. Juan with the super chat. There are rumors that Kendrick Blackshear might re-enter the portal. Is that true? Thoughts? So I'll be blunt. Yes, we had heard that this was a possibility, but we don't name names when we do this. And the reason why is because until something actually occurs, we don't know. Blackshear has been running third team after thinking that he was going to come to Texas and likely try to beat out David Benda for a starting spot. Instead, he's not only been behind Benda, and Anthony Hill, who are starters, but also behind Leonga Lafau and Mo Blackwell. So where does that leave him? We'll see if he's a situational player at Texas or he tries to go somewhere else. Right now, I am not ultra concerned about the income and outflow or exactly of certain players. I think there are going to be more guys for Texas enter the portal by April 30th. Right now, there's been 8, and I think there will be more before all is said and done. CJ is going to have a little report on that for us this weekend. Rod, I want to get your thoughts on this one. Are we concerned, from Clifton Hines, are we concerned about Derek Williams not making the big jump we all expect this season? Thought there would be more buzz around him right now after spring ball. What do you think? We're going to talk about grades for this. Well, you looked long and hard at the secondary after their performance in the spring game. What'd you see from Derek Williams?
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't much to, I mean, for a lot of frontline guys, you didn't get, many reps from those guys. There was a ton of the young guys they threw out there. I liked what I saw from Derek Williams. I mean, I thought Derek Williams was actually kind of one of the guys that he's going to be a stabilizing force, in my opinion, for the secondary. I expect him to take a leap this year. In terms of the spring game, nothing really stood out for Derek Williams. I know you haven't heard much about him in the spring. I'm hoping that that's a good sign, that he's been steady. We haven't heard anything about anybody challenging him, about, Derek Williams having, any regression of any sort. So I'm hoping that that's a good thing. There's no doubt the secondary is a concern now. I mean, most Longhorn fans, if you poll them, they tell you the secondary is a big concern now for them than the interior D-line. Because, I talked to Coach Shipley about this, and Coach Shipley said, oh, no, I'm more concerned about that secondary right now than the interior D-line, because you already got reinforcement. You brought in Seville, you brought in Bill Norton. Not only did the secondary struggle in the spring game, the same struggles they had last season, but then you lose a starter in your secondary, lose another, just a veteran piece in Austin Jordan. There's been a lot of turnover. We just talked about, Ryan Watts gone, Jaron Thompson gone out of that secondary, Keaton Crawford. You've lost a lot. So it's going to be a new look secondary, which may be a good thing. But right now it's tough for me to project it as a strength. The strange thing about the secondary, and this is why people are very critical of Terry Joseph and the coaches, is because there's talent there now. And the sum of the parts in the secondary don't add up, because the secondary has not gotten better year to year. My only excuse would be it was one of the last phases of roster construction. And that's why Derek Williams is one of the bright spots, just got there. Best coverage safety even as a freshman. Malik Muhammad, just cemented himself as a starter. Big things expected from him. Those are the guys who, Janae Barron coming back is big. Makuba added is big. But, those are the guys who are expected to carry this secondary. And, those are good players. So even for me, I'm struggling to figure out what is the reason for the underwhelming play overall from the secondary. Is it the players and their technique and the fundamentals? Is it are we just looking at a weakness in PK's structure of his defense? Because the secondary has not necessarily gotten better. It's actually gotten worse since Sark has been here. It's probably the only position that's gotten worse. So we're talking about just something, is it the way PK calls plays where you have to be vulnerable somewhere, and the place that he's choosing to be vulnerable is the secondary? I'm gonna give up those yards. I'm gonna give it up in a second. Like I am struggling right now to figure out, all right, why haven't they improved on the issues in the secondary? Some of the same issues they had last season, but it's just a spring game, so I'm not trying to overreact. But yeah, it's troubling. It's troubling to say the least what's going on in the secondary, because I can't tell you if it's a combination of coaching issues and players and their technique and talent, or if it's one specific area that right now is kind of dragging the secondary down, the pass defense down.
Good stuff. All right. Hey, this one from Michael Morrison, guys. Did you guys catch Roger Goodell on the McAfee show? I did not. But apparently he stated he doesn't know if the NCAA or the conferences run college football. Ding, 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 ding. We have a winner. I think we would all like to know I think we all know Greg Sankey has more power over college football as the SEC commissioner than Charlie Baker, who's the head of the NCAA.
Yep.
Yes.
Easily. Yeah.
So who runs it, though? That's a different problem, I think, is that the people that have the most power aren't actually the ones that are in charge of the whole shebang.
TV networks. Don't forget about
TV
them.
networks.
Don't forget about the broadcast networks. Those are also powerful figures.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the point is, right?
We don't know.
Why aren't they at the front of the line instead of Charlie Baker in the NCAA? And maybe Greg Sankey and the guy in the big it used to be Kevin Warren. Who's it now? I can't even remember.
The Big Ten.
Yeah, but my point is they got the wrong people at the table, and they need to decide on this. And I will add this: Sankey's job is not to look after the NCAA.
Nope.
And his job is to, extract shekels from TV networks for the SEC.
Damn good.
And he's doing his job as good as he knows how. So until he gets given the job to reconstruct college football, we're left with, I think, some fairly not necessarily weak-minded people at the top anymore, because I don't think they're currently weak-minded like they have been in the past, by the way. The NCAA I'm talking about. I just think they realize they're playing from a layman. They're like the lame duck coach who's got a 4-6 record, but has to, and no, he ain't going anywhere, and it has to coach out the end of the year. That's what the NCAA feels like to me right now.
Yeah,
they're just a lame duck coach.
And it's Tony Petitti.
Yeah, yep.
Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, let's keep going here. We've got some more questions coming in. CJ, your thought on this one? Sark's offense is extremely favorable to tight ends. I agree with that. JT really benefited from this, but I'm skeptical that he will be a great tight end, I guess, moving forward in the NFL. You could get good tight ends in the NFL in the 4th round. Mm-hmm. So if you can do that, why would you spend a 3 on him?
Hey, that's why we're not NFL GMs, right? But hey, if you think a guy like Ja'Tavion Sanders can be an instant impact guy for your offense, you go get him. And you do that for people at places like tight end. It's a spot where we've seen teams really create mismatches. If you look at some of the best teams in the playoffs a year ago, teams that had big-time tight ends. I mean, the Packers had a pair of really young talented rookie tight ends a year ago. The Lions obviously paid TJ Hawkinson a ton of money. Kittle, Kelsey, I mean, these guys make impact. And I think that's a tough position to really, really gauge on what they might do at the next level. That's why there's always kind of been that interesting top guy in the draft every year at the tight end position that you see go first round. You don't always get an idea of what they can do before you see it happen. So for me, my concerns with Ja'Tavion Sanders were, how often did you see the clips of him beating his man one-on-one in his route? It happens every now and then, but I certainly wouldn't say it to the extent of an Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell, who, not to compare the talents or the skill sets of those guys, but they all were kind of projected to be second-round picks, right? Like, you should still see that type of success and wins in your routes with a Ja'Tavion Sanders when he's lined up on a linebacker or a slot. You know, a lot of the big plays that he had over his career, he was schemed open. You look at those 2 big catches against Alabama, he's wide open. You know why? Because of Steve Sarkisian, more so than what Ja'Tavion Sanders did in his routes, I will add. And also, the big catches that he had in his career, a lot of them, he had a guy draped all over his shoulder. And yes, he has tremendous hands. There's no question about that. That goes back to high school when we saw those one-handed catches in the state playoffs in the end zone at the old Ranger Stadium in Arlington. I mean, those were the highlight reel plays. We know he can make those. He had that big one-handed catch against Baylor. Of course, going back to the Cotton Bowl, the 49-0 year when he had that catch that Quinn dropped in a bucket between 3 defenders as well. It makes sense that the interest in that intrigue is there for Ja'Tavion Sanders, because again, you watch him run the routes at the combine and the pro day and you're like, yeah, this guy, that's him. He's a difference maker in the passing game. But then you watch the tape elsewhere. And again, the concerns about creating separation, especially at the next level, you're going to be going up against quicker, faster, stronger linebacker, safeties, nickel cornerbacks. it makes a concern because, again, he's not a great trench guy. He's not a plus blocker. And again, that willingness is something that took years essentially to get out of him in that trenches. So I do think he falls, and I do think it's a bit of a surprise with where he ends up. If he ends up in the 4th round, I can't say right now that it would be a total surprise, but I don't know. I'll be rooting for him, obviously, but we'll see.
All right. Is D'Angelo Pons a possible target for DB? Freshman All-American out of James Madison, 52 tackles, 12 pass deflections, 2 INTs as a freshman. He is the issue there. He's 5'9".
Yeah.
And we've been talking about how Texas wants some length. That's a James Madison transfer. Some people asking about that. All right. We will get to your questions next. Going to talk a little Texans draft pick stuff in a second. But first, I want to say thank you to one of our newer sponsors. That is Jody Reynolds at thecarrotconcierge.com. With Mother's Day coming up, we're doing you a favor. You may be like me, looking for the right gift for the woman in your life. Make sure you check out thecarrotconcierge.com. Rod, do not forget about Mother's Day. You got a new mom in your house. Don't forget. Jody Reynolds is a personal jeweler, and she is the Carrot Concierge. You can see some of her beautiful creations here. You can use the QR code on the screen to see even more, or visit her on Instagram or her website, thecarrotconcierge.com as well. Jody's an Austin resident, a Texas fan. She and her family all listen to On Texas Football, and she prides herself particularly in personal service. Another thing about a personal jeweler is since they don't have a storefront, they can get as much as 30% off fine jewelry of what you see at a actual jewelry store. Jody has a number of different bracelets, rings, necklaces, and more. All beautiful jewelry, all personalized for you and yours. Check out thecarrotconcierge.com. Visit her website or give her a call. Also, use the code. Use the code here if you order online, OTF, for free shipping, because shipping can be expensive when you're talking about jewelry as well. All right, Rod Babers, I'm going to talk about you. You're the Houstonian. CJ's got the Cowboys. He's got all those guys all figured out. The Texans go to the mic for the first time. They did not have a first-round pick yesterday.
Yeah.
Any chance that the Texans are looking at a future Longhorn? What are their needs right now in the NFL draft, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, the Texans, the beauty of what the Texans have done is they could have the luxury of taking best talent available. They really could. I mean, the secondary is probably the most likely urgent need for them. They could go in the secondary, but they still have some pieces in the secondary that for them can stabilize that group. So I think they could go best talent available. If Cooper DeJean is there, the Iowa defensive back, if he's there, everybody knows I've been big on trying to bring back the white cornerback. I'd love for my Texans to be one of the teams that has a starting white cornerback. That'd be great. But if they don't get him, Kool-Aid McKinstry is another guy they could look at. They're looking at defensive backs, DBs, with that first pick of the draft for them in the second round. They also, if Jerzon Newton, if he's still there on the board, that may be a pick because – D'Amico Ryan's already said he's from that Shanahan coaching tree, and Shanahan believes in stockpiling defensive linemen, especially with early picks in the first round, because that's, if you're talking about the rarity of a skill set, and then they believe defensive linemen that's probably the rarest and the toughest thing to evaluate and acquire. So they stockpile defensive linemen, and the Texans have already started doing that, and I can see them going D lineman, wide receiver. They got Tank Dell coming off an injury. They got Nico Collins, just got Stephon Diggs. I don't know if they'd go wide receiver. Maybe if it was, a guy just dropped to him that was really good, they could go that route, but I doubt it. Linebacker, they also could go to an Edgerrin Cooper. Could be a prime candidate for them at that linebacker spot. So I would say probably secondary with the first pick for them in the second round, D-line, or linebacker. I think they'll give it to D'Amico Ryans because they've been building that defense. They want to build it, and they've added to the offense with some of the moves, some of the trades they've made in the offseason. I think they'll get it to defense. D'Amico Ryans is a defensive-minded head coach. And honestly, don't forget about Nick Caserio, who's traded more times since he's been a GM than any GM in the NFL. I wouldn't doubt that now that he didn't have a first-round pick traded out of that that he's willing and dealing in these middle rounds to get some of the players that he likes. So the Texans might be busy and too.
Does he strike you as a guy that goes after players he wants, regardless of where they're drafted? Because that's kind of what I feel like the teams that do well in the draft are not always concerned about with where they're drafting as much as who they want out of the draft.
Yeah.
And he strikes me as that kind of guy. Like he's looking for certain players that he likes. Maybe it's, there's 200 guys in the draft, 500 guys being evaluated for the draft. He probably has a board of really 50 guys he likes for his team. That's kind of the guy that from behind the scenes, that's what I've heard a little bit about him. And so rather than worrying necessarily about where he's drafting, it's all about who he's drafting.
I like that. That's good. He trusts his talent. He trusts his eye for talent, I should say. His eye for talent.
Yeah, it must be. I mean, it has to be part of it.
I'll add, I had Christian Jones at 123 to the Texans. Again, it might be a little late. That's the 4th round. We've seen some buzz about him going day 2 tonight, obviously, but I do think that's a good fit. Adding protection for a young quarterback, one that Texans fans and I think many NFL fans see as the future of the franchise. Never a bad idea. And if you can get a guy like Christian Jones who can play guard or tackle that we've talked about this offseason, makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay, question here. Michael Morrison, talking a little bit more about defensive backs in the portal. Marcus Washington is a DB from Louisville by way of Georgia, I believe. He signed with Georgia out of high school. He didn't even start for Louisville last year. So I don't think Texas is not going to try to replace Terrence Brooks with a non-starter. Maybe they have to, but I don't think so. I don't think so at this time. All right, this is the Friday afternoon Longhorn live stream. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by Rod Babers and CJ Vogel. We're talking a little NFL. We're talking a little NFL draft as well as some Longhorn news and notes. The Longhorn baseball team, I want to mention this, guys, because we'd be remiss not to mention it. They're going to Oklahoma, I believe, this weekend, and they are Texas currently 3rd in the conference. The Sooners are number 1 in the conference. A couple of things have happened over the last week to 2 weeks. Texas coach David Pierce has moved LeBaron Johnson from the Friday starter into the Sunday starter's role. Texas has been winning the Saturday and Sunday games and getting bombed on the Friday games. CJ, you and I talked about this. Blake Monroe talked about it this morning on Coffee and Football. What are your thoughts about Longhorn baseball right now? I just want to give me a few minutes here on what's going on with Longhorn baseball.
Yeah, I mean, Texas sits 11-7, tied for 3rd in the conference right now, and it doesn't really feel like that, right? Like how bizarre this season has been to be sitting right now with an opportunity to leave this weekend tied or at least have a share of the Big 12 lead. That's rather remarkable. And you could speak, of course, to the down season we've seen so far in the Big 12. Yeah, I understand that. But, the frustrations with this Texas team, regardless of that, they're still in position to make some noise in the Big 12 tournament. Of course, it's going to have to fall on the shoulders of the pitching staff, something that has been, I would say, the biggest question mark, the biggest hindrance of continual success right now for the team. But, man, you start looking at some of these numbers for the team in terms of their offensive production, and, they're in the top 3 for home runs. They can certainly score a lot of runs when asked to do so. You'd like to see it more consistently as well. But, hey, the game of baseball is a tough one. With 80, you start seeing 90-mile-per-hour sliders at the college level, and you start thinking, okay, maybe this isn't the sport I signed up for back when I was 4 or 5. It's a little bit different these days than it was. But to the point about LeBaron Johnson moving into the bullpen, my thing with him, and it's not – listen, I'm not going to harp on David Pierce's development because I don't think that's going to do any positives right now for the baseball program, of course. But in what we've seen with LeBaron Johnson this year is that fastball is mighty flat, and that was a strength of his a year ago. He's not locating his off speed, and when that's the case, opposing hitters can really sit back and say, yeah, I know you're not going to throw that curve or sweeper in the zone. We know that I can sit back and watch you throw 2 or 3 balls, get me into an advantageous hitting count as a hitter, and you're going to throw that fastball that, yes, is sitting 94 to 96, but there's no run, there's no movement, there's no drop, there's no rise. It's just a flat fastball. And at this level, especially in the Big 12, that gets punished. We saw it against BYU. We've seen it in a number of opening games of series. That's a big question mark, and it's a big concern. And that's the reason why we've seen LeBaron Johnson move into that Sunday role. Again, he needs to have a couple good outings before the postseason comes just to get that confidence going. That's right now. We've seen him in a midweek a few times over the last 2 weeks where he takes the mound, Bobby, and he just looks like, God, I hope I throw this fastball and it doesn't get hit 400 feet. And each one that doesn't, it looks to him like it's a surprise. That's not what you want from a guy who was expected to be your ace this year coming in. And for Texas, again, sitting third in the Big 12 right now at 11-7, there's a chance for them to make some noise in the conference tournament here. But if that's going to be the case, LeBaron Johnson's got to be a piece of that. And right now, I don't know if he has that confidence in him to go out there and be effective. It's a big concern. But, hey, a couple more opportunities to close out the regular season with some momentum, and a big opportunity this weekend to close the gap with a regular season Big 12 title, which Texas Athletics has won. How many this calendar year? I think the count's up to 13 after the men's tennis tournament. So, hey, it'd be an awesome opportunity to go out and add another one in baseball this year.
Would love to see the Longhorns beat the Sooners. That's just a given. In any sport, it could be tiddlywinks. All right, hey, we need to sum up some stuff here today before we get going. A couple people have come in late. A few people have come in late and want to get over this. Takario Davis is still playing in his spring practice with Arizona. So we don't expect any news on the cornerback out of Arizona until next week, perhaps late over the weekend, if any comes at all. By the way, there were at some point we thought he might be going elsewhere, but we'll see how that comes out. He is in the portal, but we'll see where that goes. Also, some other people are asking about Dominic Williams, defensive lineman out of TCU. Yes, that visit went very well for Texas. However, a couple of things here. He's still going to visit LSU this weekend, and he's likely visiting Missouri next week. So look forward to that a little bit. Texas is going to have to really stave off both Oklahoma and LSU for Dominic Williams, in my opinion. A couple other notes. Texas is looking at a couple of guys from Michigan State. Neither of them have official visits scheduled in. They were both defensive linemen. I've had some other questions. Devon Townley, a defensive lineman out of Penn State. Texas is not looking at him. At least they weren't. He played in only 3 games last year. So you got to remember, Texas is looking for immediate help, not necessarily take and bake guys in the portal. All right, good luck tonight again to all the Longhorns. We hope 4 or more Longhorns will go tonight in the second and third rounds of the NFL draft. We're very excited about that, and those young guys will be watching to see where they go and stuff. Also, thank you to CJ Vogel. Thank you to Rod Bavers. Thank you to our sponsors, South Point Dodge, Jody Reynolds at the Carrot Concierge, as well as our friends at Flat Creek Estate Winery. Give them a chance out there. That's a terrific place to go to and hang out at. All right, for Rod Bavers and CJ Vogel, hope everybody has a nice Friday. TGIF, guys, and hook 'em.
Hook 'em.